Missing someone isn't random. It follows real psychological patterns, specific triggers in the mind that make a person linger in someone's thoughts long after they've left the room. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about understanding what genuinely happens in the brain when a real connection has formed, and why certain kinds of presence leave a lasting imprint, even in someone's absence. Today, we're breaking down 4 real psychological triggers that explain why a man finds himself missing someone, sometimes even when he can't quite explain why. Let's get into it. Before we dive in, it's worth being clear about what this video is and isn't about. This isn't a guide to manufacturing false longing through games or manipulation. Those tactics tend to create short-term confusion, not genuine connection, and they usually backfire once someone senses what's happening. What we're covering instead is the actual psychology behind missing someone, the real, well-documented mental patterns that explain why certain people stay present in our minds, long after they're physically gone. It's worth being upfront about this distinction, because a lot of relationship content online blurs the line between genuine psychological understanding and manipulative tactics disguised as psychology. Real, lasting longing isn't something you can engineer through calculated absence or deliberate mixed signals. Those approaches tend to create anxiety, not affection, and the difference between the two is something people can usually sense, even if they can't quite articulate it. What we're exploring today are the honest, well-researched mechanisms behind genuine emotional imprinting, the kind that happens naturally, as a byproduct of real connection, not manufactured through strategy. Understanding these patterns isn't about tricking anyone. It's about recognizing what naturally happens when genuine connection, presence, and positive experience come together, and how you might already be creating this effect without even realizing it. The first trigger is something psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency for the human mind to hold onto unfinished experiences far more persistently than completed ones. This effect was first observed by a psychologist named Zeigarnik, who noticed that waiters could remember complex, unpaid orders in vivid detail, but forgot them almost instantly once the bill was settled. The underlying principle is simple. Our minds treat incomplete things as unresolved business, and unresolved business keeps demanding mental attention, almost like an open tab the brain doesn't want to close. In relationships, this shows up in a very specific way. Conversations that end on genuine curiosity rather than complete closure tend to stay on someone's mind longer. A story you didn't finish telling, a question he asked that you playfully didn't fully answer yet, a conversation that naturally trailed off because time ran out, not because the topic was exhausted. These small, genuinely unfinished threads create a kind of mental open loop. And open loops are exactly what the mind keeps returning to, almost involuntarily. This isn't about deliberately withholding information as a manipulation tactic. That tends to feel obvious and off-putting. It's about the natural result of genuine, engaging conversation that doesn't always wrap up perfectly and completely, because real conversations rarely do. You can actually see this pattern reflected in everyday entertainment too. Television shows use cliffhangers for exactly this reason. An unresolved plotline is far more likely to keep someone thinking about the show between episodes than a neatly wrapped-up story ever would. The same basic mental mechanism applies to relationships. A conversation, or a small unanswered question, that trails off naturally tends to keep gently occupying someone's thoughts, not because anything was deliberately withheld, but simply because the mind doesn't like leaving things open. The second trigger involves something psychologists call sensory anchoring, the way certain smells, sounds, or sensory details become tightly linked to a specific person in someone's memory. Scent, in particular, is processed by the brain through the olfactory bulb, which has a uniquely close connection to the areas of the brain responsible for memory and emotion. This is why a specific perfume, or even a particular shampoo, can trigger an intense, vivid memory of someone almost instantly, far more powerfully than a photograph often can. Similarly, a specific song that played during a meaningful moment, or even a particular laugh or tone of voice, can become deeply anchored to memories of a person. This means that consistency in these small sensory details, wearing a particular scent regularly, for example, isn't superficial. It's genuinely creating a stronger, more distinct sensory imprint in someone's memory. When he encounters that same scent somewhere else entirely, unrelated to you, his brain often pulls up an associated memory of you almost automatically, simply because of how tightly interconnected scent and memory are neurologically. This is also why certain songs, once tied to a meaningful memory, can feel almost impossible to listen to casually afterward. The association is simply too strong. This isn't something anyone consciously designs. It happens naturally, through repeated pairing of a sensory detail with a specific emotional experience. Over time, that pairing becomes strong enough that the sensory cue alone is enough to trigger the entire memory and its associated feeling, almost instantly and involuntarily. The third trigger is rooted in classical conditioning, the tendency for the brain to associate a person with the overall emotional state they consistently create. If someone consistently makes another person feel genuinely good, relaxed, appreciated, amused, at ease, the brain begins to link that person, quite literally, with that positive emotional state itself. Over time, simply thinking about that person can trigger a small echo of the good feeling associated with being around them, even in their absence. This is the same underlying mechanism, at a basic level, that makes certain places, songs, or objects feel emotionally significant, simply because of the feelings we repeatedly experienced in connection with them. This is why genuine warmth, humor, and ease in someone's presence tend to be so much more powerful than performed excitement or manufactured drama. Manufactured intensity might create a temporary spike of attention, but it doesn't build the same kind of durable, positive emotional association. Consistent, genuine good feeling does, and that association is exactly what makes someone's absence noticeable, because the good feeling they were used to experiencing regularly is suddenly missing from their day. This also explains why some relationships that felt intensely exciting in the moment fade from memory relatively quickly, while others, built on quieter, more consistent warmth, seem to linger for years. Intensity creates a strong short-term impression, but it's repetition and consistency of genuine positive feeling that build the kind of deep, durable emotional association that shows up as real, lasting missing someone, not just a passing thought. The fourth and final trigger is what psychologists sometimes call the contrast effect, the way absence becomes noticeable specifically because it disrupts an established rhythm or routine. When someone becomes a regular, consistent part of another person's life, a daily text, a familiar voice, a predictable presence, their absence creates a genuinely felt gap, almost like a habit interrupted. This is different from dramatic, sporadic attention, which doesn't create the same kind of routine to miss in the first place. Consistency, ironically, is what makes absence noticeable at all. You can't miss something that was never a stable part of your day to begin with. This is why healthy, consistent presence tends to create longing far more effectively than intermittent, unpredictable attention. When something becomes a reliable part of someone's routine, its sudden absence stands out sharply against the contrast of what used to be there. And that contrast is what genuinely makes someone notice and miss what's missing. This is worth emphasizing because it directly contradicts a common but misguided piece of relationship advice. The idea that unpredictability and inconsistency create more longing than reliability does. In reality, unpredictable attention tends to create anxiety and preoccupation, which can feel similar to missing someone but is psychologically quite different. It's driven by uncertainty, not genuine attachment. True missing, the kind rooted in real connection, comes from the disruption of something that had become a stable, trusted part of daily life. Let's bring it all together. 1. The Zeigarnik effect. Genuinely unfinished conversations and moments linger in the mind as open loops. 2. Sensory anchors. Consistent scent, sound, or sensory detail become tightly linked to memories of you. 3. Positive emotional association. Consistently feeling good around you links that feeling directly to you, even in your absence. 4. The contrast effect. Becoming a consistent, reliable part of someone's routine makes your absence genuinely noticeable. None of these triggers require games or manipulation. They're simply what happens naturally when real connection, consistency, and positive presence come together. And understanding them helps explain why some people are missed deeply, while others are quickly forgotten, no matter how exciting they seemed in the moment. If this video gave you a deeper understanding of the real psychology behind missing someone, that's exactly why this channel exists. We explore the hidden psychology behind love, attraction, and human behavior, the patterns that are true, but rarely explained clearly anywhere else. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we release new psychology and relationship insights every week. And I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 4 triggers surprised you most? Drop a comment and let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.